Hello students, today we are going to learn a file system in operating system. A file is a named collection of related information that is recorded on secondary storage such as magnetic disks, magnetic tapes and optical disc. Now, what do you mean by a file structure? A file structure should be according to a required format that the operating system can understand. A file has a certain defined structure according to its type. A text file is a sequence of characters organized into lines. A source file is a sequence of procedures and functions. An object file is a sequence of bytes organized into blocks that are understandable by the machine. When operating system defines different file structures, it also contains the code to support this file structure. Now, what do you mean by a file type? File type refers to the ability of the operating system to distinguish different types of file such as text file, source file and binary file, etc. Now, what do you mean by ordinary files? These are the files that contain user information. These may have text, databases or executable program. The user can apply various operations on such files like add, modify, delete or even remove the entire file. Now, what do you mean by a directory files? These files contain list of file names and other information related to these files. Now, special files. These files are also known as device files. These files represent physical devices like disk, terminals, printer, networks, etc. Now, these special files are of two types: character special files and block special files. Now, what do you mean by a character special files? Data is handled character by character, as in case of terminals or printers. Block special files. Data is handled in blocks, as in the case of disks and tapes. Now, file access mechanism. Now, what do you mean by a file access mechanism? File access mechanism refers to the manner in which the records of a file may be accessed. There are several ways to access the files: sequential access, direct or random access, indexed sequential access. Sequential access. A sequential access is that in which the records are accessed in some sequence. That is, the information in the file is processed in order, one record after the other. This access method is the most primitive one. Now, direct or random access. Random access file organization provides accessing the records directly. Each record has its own addresses on the file by the help of which it can be directly accessed for reading or writing. The records need not be in any sequence with the file and they need not be in adjacent locations on the storage medium. Now, indexed sequential access. This mechanism is built up on the base of sequential access. An index is created for each file which contains pointers to various blocks. Index is searched sequentially and its pointer is used to access the file directly. Now we can learn about the definitions and some explanation regarding a space allocation. Files are allocated disk spaces by operating system. Operating systems following three main ways to allocate disk. So there are three main ways to allocate a disk file: contiguous allocation, linked allocation, indexed allocation. Now, contiguous allocation. Each file occupies a contiguous address space on disk. Assigned disk address is in linear order. It is easy to implement. External fragmentation is a major issue with this type of allocation technique. Now, linked allocation. Each file carries a list of links to disk blocks. Directory contains link pointer to first block of a file. No external fragmentation. Effectively used in sequential access file. Inefficient in case of direct access file. Indexed allocation. It provides solutions to problems of contiguous and linked allocation. An index block is created having all pointers to file. Each file has its own index block which stores the addresses of disk space occupied by the file. Directory contains the addresses of index blocks of file. File operations. A file is an abstract data type. For defining a file properly, we need to consider the operations that can be performed on files. The operating system can provide system calls to create, write, read, reposition, delete the files. There are 6 basic file operations within an operating system. These are: creating file. There are 2 steps necessary for creating a file. First, space in the file system must be found for the file. We discuss how to allocate space for the file. Now second, an entry for the new file must be made in the directory. Second is writing a file. To write a file, you make a system call specify about both the name of the file along with the information to be returned to the file. Now third, reading a file. To read from a file, you use a system call which specifies the name of the file and where within memory the next block of the file should be placed. Repositioning inside a file. The directory is then searched for the suitable entry and the current file position pointer is relocating to a given value. Relocating within a file need not require any actual input-output. This file operation is also known as file seek. Now, deleting a file. For deleting a file, you have to search the directory for the specific file. Deleting the file or directory release all file space so that other files can reuse that space. Next is truncating a file. The user may wish for erasing the content of a file but keep the attributes same. That is truncating a file. That truncating truncating a file. Rather than deleting the file and then recreate it, its utility allows all attributes to remain unchanged except the file length, and let the user add or edit the file content.